I had just landed a new job in Ibadan and needed a place to stay fast. My budget was tight, so when my agent showed me a room in a shared apartment for what seemed like a ridiculously low price, I jumped at it. It was in a quiet neighborhood. The room was spacious, and the landlord seemed friendly enough. It felt like I'd hit the jackpot. The first few days were perfect. I settled in, met my flatmates who were mostly students and young professionals, and started my new job. Everything was going great. Then, about a week in, the strange things started happening. It began subtly. I'd leave my room and come back to find things slightly moved. My laptop would be open when I was sure I'd closed it. My books would be rearranged on the shelf. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe one of my flatmates was playing a prank or that I was just being forgetful in the stress of a new city and job. I'd ask them about it, and they'd just look at me, confused, denying they ever entered my room. I wanted to believe them, but it escalated. One night, I was woken up by a soft tapping sound. Tap, tap. It was coming from inside my wardrobe. My heart started hammering in my chest. I stared at the wardrobe doors in the darkness, too scared to move. The tapping continued for about a minute, then stopped as suddenly as it began. I didn't sleep a wink for the rest of the night. The next morning, I chalked it up to a bad dream, a product of my overactive imagination. The following night, it happened again. This time, the tapping was louder, more insistent. Tap, dash, tap, dash, tap, dash, tap, dash, tap. It sounded like someone was desperately trying to get out. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it at the wardrobe, my hand shaking. I yelled out, "Who's there? This isn't funny." Silence. Complete and utter silence. Gathering all my courage, I slowly got out of bed, tiptoed to the wardrobe, and yanked the doors open. Nothing, just my clothes hanging exactly as I'd left them. My blood ran cold. I knew I wasn't dreaming. Things got worse. I started hearing whispers when I was alone in the room. Faint, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from the very walls around me. Sometimes it sounded like a woman humming a lullaby, a sad, mournful tune that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Other times it was a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. I was constantly on edge, jumping at every little sound. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I started looking exhausted at work, and my colleagues noticed. One evening, I decided to talk to one of my older flatmates, a guy named Tund. I found him in the kitchen and hesitantly told him about the tapping and the whispers. He listened patiently, his expression growing more and more serious. When I finished, he sighed heavily. He told me that the room had a history. The last person who lived there, a young student, had left in the middle of the night without a word, leaving all his belongings behind. Before him, there were others. No one ever stayed for more than a few weeks. The landlord, he said, was desperate to keep the room filled, which is why the rent was so cheap. He then told me the story. Years ago, a woman had lived in that very room. She was heartbroken after a tragic loss and unable to cope with the pain. She had taken her own life inside that wardrobe. My stomach lurched. The tapping, the humming, it all made a terrifying kind of sense. Tund warned me to be careful, to maybe find another place. I was scared, but a part of me was still skeptical. And besides, where would I go? I couldn't afford to break my lease and find a new apartment so soon. I decided to try and ignore it, to prove to myself it was all just stories. That night was the worst night of my life. I went to bed trying to block out the fear, but it was impossible. Around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake, not by tapping, but by the feeling of the bed dipping beside me, as if someone had just sat down. I was paralyzed with fear, my eyes squeezed shut. I could feel a cold presence next to me. I could hear faint, raspy breathing right by my ear. Then a cold, weightless hand touched my cheek. It was a feathery, icy touch that sent a jolt of pure terror through my entire body. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The sound was trapped in my throat. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, frozen, listening to the soft breathing, feeling that cold spot on the bed. Then I heard the whisper, clear as day, right in my ear. A woman's voice, full of sorrow and malice, said, "Get out." It wasn't a request. It was a command, filled with a chilling hatred. That's when I finally broke. I let out a scream, leaped out of bed, and fumbled for the light switch. As the room flooded with light, it was empty. The cold spot on the bed was gone, but the terror remained. I didn't even think. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my phone. I didn't pack a single bag. I flung my door open and ran out of the apartment as if my life depended on it. I didn't stop running until I was several streets away, panting under a streetlight. I called Tund, my voice trembling, and told him I was out. I was done. He just said, "Good. Don't go back, ever." I spent the night at a friend's place, recounting the horror. The next day, I called my agent and the landlord and told them I was breaking the lease. I didn't even ask for my money back. I just wanted to be free of that place. I never went back for my things. The thought of stepping foot in that room again, of opening that wardrobe, was more than I could bear. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if I'd stayed another night. Sometimes, a deal that seems too good to be true really is. And I learned that lesson the hard way in a haunted room in Ibadan. Thanks for watching, and remember to trust your instincts. See you next time.